The sun was shining softly over the small town where the little puppy lived. Its fur sparkled like golden threads, and its eyes sparkled with curiosity. It was a peaceful morning, and everything felt just right. Birds chirped, leaves rustled in the wind, and the puppy's tail wagged with excitement. The puppy, full of energy and wonder, had just finished its breakfast and was playing near its cozy little home at the edge of a forest. Every day was an adventure, but today felt extra special. Something in the air felt new, inviting, and full of mystery. The puppy's nose twitched. A beautiful butterfly, with wings painted in bright orange and black, fluttered close. It danced in the air like a floating flower. The puppy barked playfully and began to chase it, its tiny paws kicking up little clouds of dust. The butterfly soared higher, and the puppy leaped after it, giggling in its own puppy way. Without thinking, the puppy ran further and further, past the familiar garden, past the tall fence, and into the thick grass that bordered the forest. It didn't even notice the change in scenery at first. The butterfly was just too mesmerizing. The trees got taller, the sunlight became patchier, and the noises changed. There were no more clanking dishes or people calling names. Just the deep, hushed sounds of the forest. Suddenly, the butterfly rose high into the sky and disappeared into the treetops. The puppy stopped, panting and looking around. Everything looked so different. The ground was covered in crunchy leaves and twigs. The trees stood like giant guardians, stretching up to the sky and blocking out most of the light. Shadows danced on the forest floor. The puppy tilted its head. Where was the fence? Where was its house? It spun in circles, sniffing the air, but the scents were unfamiliar. No smell of breakfast. No scent of home. Just moss, bark, and damp earth. Panic began to bubble in its tiny chest. It gave a small whimper and barked once, twice, hoping someone might hear. But the forest stayed quiet. A bird flew overhead, cawing loudly, and startled the little pup. It backed up against a tree and looked around with wide eyes. Suddenly, every sound became louder: the wind through the trees, the crackling under its feet, and the occasional hoot from far away. The puppy realized it had wandered too far. It was lost. All because of that butterfly. The thought made the puppy feel sad and silly. It sat down and lowered its head, ears drooping. But even in its sadness, the puppy remembered something: its owner's smile, the warm bed by the fireplace, and the loving voice that always said, "Come here, little one." That memory brought a spark back to its eyes. It couldn't just sit there. It had to find its way back. The forest might be big, but the puppy's heart was brave. It stood up, sniffed the air again, and took a careful step forward. It didn't know the way home yet, but it was ready to start the journey. Answer, with its nose low and ears perked, the lost puppy began walking deeper into the forest, unaware of the adventure, and the friends that awaited. The forest was unlike anything the little puppy had ever seen before. As it stepped farther in, the towering trees stood like giants, their thick branches weaving a roof above that let only tiny specks of sunlight through. The shadows on the ground shifted gently, and every leaf seemed to whisper secrets in the wind. The puppy took cautious steps, each paw pressing softly against the damp earth, crunching fallen twigs and leaves with every move. It wasn't just walking. It was stepping into a whole new world, mysterious and unknown. The deeper it went, the more the sounds changed. The cheerful noises from the town faded away completely. In their place came soft rustlings, distant chirps, and the occasional rustle of a bush. The puppy froze more than once, its ears twitching at each new sound. Was that a rabbit, a bird, or something else? The forest didn't feel scary. It felt alive. Alive with things the puppy didn't understand, but somehow needed to. Every smell was new, every texture strange. The air had a cool, earthy scent, mixed with the scent of wildflowers and something damp, like the scent after a rainstorm. Suddenly, a breeze passed through, swaying the trees and carrying with it the sweet aroma of pine. The puppy sniffed eagerly, trying to find something familiar. But the smell of home was gone. All that remained was the wild heart of the forest and its endless mysteries. The puppy's heart beat a little faster. It didn't know where to go. Should it turn left, where the moss was thick and soft? Or right, where a narrow dirt path curved gently into the trees? It paused. The wind blew again, and this time it brought a low, echoing hoot. The puppy looked up, startled. High above, perched on a thick branch, sat an old owl with big round eyes. The owl blinked slowly, watching the small traveler with interest. The puppy tilted its head, and the owl gave a soft hoot, then flapped its wings and vanished into the treetops. It was like the forest was full of watchers, silent, wise, and waiting. As the puppy continued, the trees began to look more twisted, their trunks covered in thick green moss. Long vines dangled like ropes, and little mushrooms poked out of the soil. Everything seemed ancient. There was no clear path, but somehow, the puppy knew it had to keep going. It felt as if the forest was gently guiding it, encouraging it to be brave, to trust its instincts. The puppy stumbled over a root and fell with a soft yelp. It picked itself up quickly, shaking off the dirt. A tiny squirrel darted out from behind a bush and paused to look at the pup. The puppy wagged its tail hopefully, but the squirrel just twitched its tail and ran up a tree. Still, it made the puppy feel less alone. There were creatures everywhere, hidden, moving, watching. Maybe not all were friends, but they all belonged to this place. Further along, the trees grew thinner, letting in more light. A small stream trickled nearby, its soft gurgling sound offering a bit of comfort. The puppy walked to its edge and lapped at the cool water. It felt refreshing and gave the puppy the strength to continue. Across the stream, a small hill rose gently, covered in wildflowers. With a deep breath and a determined step, the puppy crossed over, leaving tiny wet paw prints behind. The forest was vast and confusing, but the puppy was learning. Every new turn, every rustle, every breeze was part of the journey. Though it didn't know exactly where it was heading, it knew it couldn't stop. Somewhere, beyond all these trees, was the warm home it missed so much. And even though the path ahead was uncertain, the little puppy kept walking, ready for whatever came next. The puppy padded forward with new confidence. The journey through the forest had brought moments of fear, yes, but also moments of wonder. It had followed the owl, played with the squirrel, and walked beside the graceful deer. Each step, each meeting, had given it a little more strength. Now, as the sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the ground, the forest took on a quieter mood. The trees whispered more softly, and the air felt heavier, almost still. Then, without warning, dark clouds began to gather in the sky above. The sunlight that had warmed the puppy's back disappeared behind a gray curtain. The breeze picked up, stronger now, tugging at the leaves and shaking the branches. The puppy stopped and looked up, confused. A low rumble rolled across the sky. Thunder. The puppy whimpered, ears folding back. It had never been in a storm before, not alone. A flash of light streaked across the sky, followed by another deep growl of thunder. Then the rain came, first in drops, then in heavy sheets. Cold, wet, and fast. The puppy darted under a large bush for shelter, pressing its body into the ground, trying to stay dry. But the rain was relentless. Water trickled through the leaves and soaked its fur. Shivering and scared, the puppy curled into a ball. For a moment, it forgot about home. All it could think about was how lost and wet it was, and how loud the storm had become. But just when it felt like the fear might be too much, something caught its attention. A sound different from the thunder. A steady, rushing noise, like wind, but heavier. The puppy lifted its head. It wasn't wind. It was water. Cautiously, it crawled from under the bush and followed the sound. Just ahead, hidden behind a thick row of trees, was a wide river. It flowed fast and rough, swollen from the storm. The current rushed over rocks and roots, churning the water into white foam. The puppy stepped closer to the edge and stared across. The other side looked clearer, drier, and somehow closer to something familiar. But how could it get across? There was no bridge, no shallow spot to wade through. The puppy paced along the riverbank, searching for a way over. Its paws sank into the muddy ground, and rain continued to pour. It barked once, hoping for a miracle. And then, it saw something. A tree had fallen across the river, its thick trunk lying like a natural bridge from one side to the other. The bark was wet and slippery, and the river below roared with force. The puppy's heart pounded. It was risky. One wrong step and it could fall into the churning water. But deep inside, a voice told it this was the way forward. With a deep breath, the puppy stepped onto the fallen tree. Its paws slid slightly, but it kept going. One paw at a time. Slowly, carefully. The river below rushed angrily, but the puppy didn't look down. It focused on the other side. On what waited beyond. Rain soaked its fur, and wind howled in its ears, but it kept moving. Halfway across, a strong gust of wind made the tree shake. The puppy stopped and crouched low, holding tight with its tiny paws. It whimpered, but it didn't go back. It waited for the wind to ease, then took a few more steps, trembling. Closer, closer, and finally, with one last brave leap, it jumped from the end of the tree onto solid ground. The puppy collapsed for a moment, breathing hard, soaked and shaking, but safe. It looked back at the tree bridge and the wild river it had crossed. The storm still rumbled overhead, but something had changed. The puppy had faced a challenge it never thought it could handle, and made it through. It stood up, stronger than before, and as it shook the rain from its fur and sniffed the air, a new scent reached its nose. Faint, but familiar, the scent of home. It was still far, but closer now. The puppy's journey was not over, but its heart was braver, and the path ahead was calling. The rain slowed to a soft drizzle as the puppy moved forward, each step squishing softly in the damp soil. The trees had thinned, and the forest no longer towered over it like a maze of shadows. There was light now, muted and gray from the storm clouds, but light nonetheless. The path ahead was unfamiliar, yet the puppy walked with more purpose. Every moment spent in the forest had shaped it, changed it. It was no longer just a lost little creature. It was a brave one, tested by wind, water, and fear, and still walking forward. Suddenly, the puppy heard a faint sound. It paused, ears perked. A soft rustling. Then another sound. Gentle footsteps in the distance. The puppy's heart beat faster. Was someone there? It ran a few steps forward, then slowed. The trees opened into a wide clearing where the grass was tall and wildflowers grew in scattered patches. In the center of the clearing stood an old wooden cabin, its roof covered in moss, smoke curling gently from a crooked chimney. The puppy approached slowly. Its nose twitched. There were scents here: warm bread, fresh wood, and something else, something familiar. A quiet bark escaped its mouth, unsure but hopeful. From the cabin's door emerged an old man with kind eyes and a thick gray beard. He looked surprised at first, then crouched down and opened his arms. "Well, hello there," he said gently, his voice as warm as a fireplace. The puppy hesitated, then bolted forward, tail wagging wildly. It wasn't its owner, not the home it remembered, but it was kindness, and that was enough. The man scooped the puppy into his arms, cradling it close. "You're soaked, little one," he chuckled. "Been out in that storm, have you? Poor thing." Inside the cabin, the warmth wrapped around the puppy like a soft blanket. A fire crackled in a stone hearth, casting flickering orange light across the wooden walls. The man dried the puppy with a towel, set out a small bowl of food, and gently scratched behind its ears. "Don't worry," he whispered. "You're safe here for now." The puppy curled up by the fire, its belly full and body warm. Outside, the storm finally cleared. Moonlight broke through the clouds, and the trees shimmered as water dripped from their leaves. The forest seemed to sigh in relief. And so did the puppy. That night, the puppy dreamt, not of fear or confusion, but of its own home. The smell of the old rug it used to nap on, The sound of its human calling from the kitchen, the soft jingle of its collar. The memories were clear now, no longer lost in the panic of being separated. The dream was peaceful, but it came with a longing, a pull deep in the puppy's heart that reminded it where it truly belonged. The next morning, the sun returned. Bright, golden light spilled into the cabin and danced across the wooden floor. Birds chirped outside, and the trees glowed in the fresh light of a new day. The man sat at a table, sipping tea, watching the puppy with kind eyes. "I've got a feeling someone's missing you," he said softly. He tied a small scarf around the puppy's neck, bright red and cozy. "There, now if someone sees you, they'll know you're loved." After breakfast, the man walked the puppy to the edge of the clearing. Beyond it, the forest path continued, but it looked different now. Not dark or confusing, but full of promise. The puppy turned and licked the man's hand, tail wagging low and grateful. "Go on, little one," the man said, pointing down the path. "Your journey's not over yet." With a final glance back, the puppy stepped into the trees again. It didn't feel alone anymore. It carried with it the warmth of the cabin, the memory of the fire, and the kindness of the man who gave it rest. The forest was no longer just a place of fear and mystery. It was also a place of friendship, of discovery, and now, of hope. The wind was calm, the leaves whispered softly, and ahead, the path felt familiar somehow, like it was leading closer and closer to home. The puppy walked through the forest with a different kind of energy now. Though its legs were tired and its paws a little sore, its heart felt full, full of memories, full of hope. The fear that had once wrapped around it like a heavy fog was now gone, replaced by the strength it had gathered through every step of its journey. The forest had tested it, taught it, and held it, and now it felt as though the trees themselves were guiding it forward. The sky above was a brilliant blue, and sunlight poured through the leaves like golden threads. Birds sang cheerfully in the trees. Butterflies fluttered past the puppy's nose, and it paused for a moment to watch them, head tilted, tail swishing gently. Every part of the forest seemed to be celebrating the new day, and, perhaps, the little puppy that had come so far. The path grew clearer with each step, less tangled, more open. And then, without warning, the puppy stopped. Its ears perked up, nose twitching fast. There it was, that smell. Not just any scent, but the scent. Home. It sniffed again, heart racing. The grass, the flowers, the warm, familiar air. The smell of its blanket, its food bowl, its human. All of it flooded its little body with excitement. Without a second thought, the puppy took off running. The trees rushed past in a blur as it bounded over roots and rocks, leaping through the tall grass. The sound of birds faded behind it. All it could hear now was the thump of its own paws and the rush of its heartbeat. The forest began to thin quickly. Trees gave way to bushes, bushes to open fields, and the sky opened wide above. And then, at the edge of a hill, it stopped. There, in the distance, nestled at the end of a quiet road, was a small house with a red roof and a white fence. A place the puppy knew by heart. It stared for a second, not believing its eyes. Then, like a spark, its body took over, and it ran as fast as its legs would carry it, barking with joy. As it reached the fence, a voice cried out from the porch. A familiar voice. A voice it had been longing to hear. "Buddy, buddy, is that you?" The front door burst open, and a young boy ran out, tears already streaming down his face. The puppy leapt into his arms, licking his cheeks, wagging its tail so fast it looked like a blur. The boy hugged the puppy tight, burying his face in its wet fur. "You're back. You really came back. I missed you so much." The boy's parents rushed out, kneeling beside him, their eyes wide with joy and disbelief. They hugged the puppy too, showering it with love, petting its ears, and wrapping it in a warm towel. "You're such a brave little one," the mother whispered. "Where have you been?" The puppy barked softly, as if trying to explain the forest, the owl, the deer, the storm, and the kind old man in the cabin. It had so much to tell, but for now, being home was enough. The boy carried the puppy inside, setting it gently on a soft rug near the fireplace. Its favorite spot. A bowl of water was placed beside it, and soon a dish of warm food. The puppy ate happily, tail still wagging between bites. Then it curled up in a cozy blanket, the red scarf from the forest man still tied around its neck like a badge of honor. Outside, the forest swayed gently in the breeze, as if giving a final farewell to the traveler it had watched over. The trees stood tall, quiet and proud. The puppy sighed, eyes half closed, body finally resting. It had been lost, frightened, and alone. But now, after a journey filled with danger, friendship, courage, and heart, it had found its way home, stronger, braver, and loved more than ever before.